There is a beautiful dance on the path of healing between effort and grace. All of this ultimately leads to freedom, which opens up fields of potential for you and for the collective. What in you is ready to shift and evolve and meet this new day in a new way of being? Welcome to this episode. Thank you so much for being here. This episode is a solo where I share more about the path of healing and really more about how we work as human beings, our body-mind system, and also a bit more of my own journey and hopefully some guidance that's useful as you are exploring your path of healing. I want to really invite you to join our membership. For me, us coming together collectively from all over the world and actually being on a path of healing together is such an important aspect of this. In our soul space, that's what we do. We have these energy sessions where we come together and we explore a different theme that feels alive in the group. Perhaps it's come from a recent podcast episode or something that somebody present is feeling. And then we actually tap into our collective subconscious around this theme, integrating patterns and shadows, fear, guilt, shame. And then we plant these seeds. And I share more in this episode about the seeds and how they contain energy and information that really invites new ways of being within us. And for me, this part of the podcast of us not only listening passively, but us actually also really evolving and allowing the transmissions from all of the conversations and also to go deeper together, to come together as a global community. For me, that's what's really exciting about all of this. And I just love meeting you all in Soul Space and in our community group. I want to also invite you to join on the 26th of July, the Global Forgiveness Field, where we're going to clear a huge amount of resentment on the collective issues that we're facing in order to open up more creativity. I feel like this is going to be really, really powerful. So I really, really invite you to tune in. That's going to be hosted by Barbara J. Hunt, and you can find the information about that on our website. Also, my next in-person event will be on the 19th of July, and that will take place in Somerset. So for anyone that's in the area, do come and join for that. In this episode called The Path of Healing, Fields of Potential, we explore the themes of energy healing, transformation, and relationships as we speak to the question, what is healing work and why is it important? I hope that this episode really invites a different perspective in understanding yourself and opens you up deeper into these fields of potential. Welcome to All That We Are, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between activism, the sacred, creativity, and regeneration, the spaces where our inner and outer worlds dance. From healing trauma to nature connection, to new technologies, to ancient wisdom, it's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a more beautiful future. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to listen, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing and envisioning, we create the futures of our wildest dreams. And we begin to embody all that we are becoming, and all that is possible. It's now been
21 years since my first near-death experience, since this accident that I was in Bolivia where our bus fell down the side of a mountain. And I was in that time between school and university, and it was the start of a trilogy of three accidents, and the second of which my legs got driven over by a four-wheel drive pickup truck at the age of 21. And the third being a hit and run where my dear friend actually died, and she was in that first accident with me, and I was with her in New York City when this accident occurred. These three events were such a strong catalyst for me to have to go on some kind of healing journey. I feel that we are at a time where many of you that are here in this community that listen to this are already deep in a journey of reimagining and dissolution and allowing yourself to be recreated in every moment and to keep integrating different aspects of yourself and to keep opening up to possibilities within yourself. And it's a really courageous path. I also feel that in recent years, so many have experienced deeper levels of grief and anxiety, other mental health stresses, as well as illnesses and chronic illnesses that may have turned you into searching deeper and wanting to explore deeper what is underneath, or what else is possible, or how you can not feel so bad. I felt like it might be helpful to share a little bit about that journey of healing and finding teachers, finding practitioners that you can work with, knowing what the right modality for you at one time is. And I can also share a little bit more about what I offer outside of the space of the podcast. It's helpful to have a little bit of perspective and understanding on how we actually work as humans, and really that space of our inner worlds and how our thoughts and our energy and our physical health, how they're holistic, and what exactly are like the mechanisms behind it. So this is something that I really took time to explain in my book, Intuition, because I felt like when I was asked to write a book about the unseen world, to write a book about the intelligence that we all have, but we have not necessarily understood how to use. And I would say that at best, in reality, what's happened is we have experienced hundreds of years of systems of oppression that have purposely cut us off from our full understanding of what's possible for us as human beings, for the wisdom that we have access to that exists in the unseen world, to our capacity to be in kinship, to be in direct relationship with that which is unseen, to our capacity to even communicate with people in our lives without actually communicating with them. You know, if you were listening to the recent podcast with Barbara Hunt on forgiveness, when you do that forgiveness work, just like when you do certain aspects of healing work, you might find that you're in dialogue with people in your lives, and people that are no longer here, that have died, or it might be people whose ego conditioned being that you're actually in relationship with in your day-to-day life means that it's not possible to have these heart, really present conversations with their higher selves, with their souls, with the aspect of them that is healed, is open, is loving, wants connection over everything else. And actually, in this space of our inner world, we are able to have very rich, dynamic relationships with those in our lives and other parts of the unseen world, be it the trees, the rivers, be it our ancestors, our future generations, that we can actually tap into this space where we are in connection and active communication with so much more than we can see, and that we are able to connect with each other. In my book, Intuition, I share a lot more about how the body mind energy relationship works. And I'm going to share a couple of little bits here because I feel like these bits are really helpful. And one part of that is to understand the lens of our conditioning, that we are conditioned by our experiences in life, our family's values and story, the culture of our workplace, the school that we went to, the magazines that we read, and so on. All of this information enters into our subconscious and it affects how we think, feel, and act. Your subconscious mind is all the information you've stored that you're not fully aware of. What is interesting about this is that even if you put a lot of effort to develop certain patterns or behaviors through your mind, your core thoughts come from the beliefs you received as a child. Between the third trimester in your mother's womb and the age of 7, you're at your most sponge-like. You are learning and taking in everything that you're exposed to. This means that at a young age, you can learn new skills easily, everything from walking and how to tie your shoelaces to speaking different languages and riding a bike. Until the age of 7, your brain is in theta brainwave state, which means there is no filter. Your consciousness isn't yet able to evaluate the data it is receiving, to choose if you want to store it or not. This is important because as an adult, 95% of your thoughts come from your subconscious, and 75% of these are often limiting, self-sabotaging beliefs. Only 5% of your thoughts come from the conscious mind that you cultivate as an adult. This can keep you in a loop where you're living out your past, and in particular your childhood, constantly. If you use this lens of awareness to look around you at people that you know well, such as your loved ones, colleagues, friends, it's not difficult to see what they were like as a child. You have around 60,000 thoughts a day. On average, 95% of these are the same ones as the ones that you had yesterday. For many people, the majority of these negative thoughts are coming from limiting beliefs in the subconscious. Unless you've done really deep work to clear these beliefs or have a mindset that is predominantly positive. This explains why being open to new ideas and new ways of being can be difficult. It can be easy to get stuck in your ways and give up when trying new things. The exciting part is that with some attention and awareness, you are able to reprogram your subconscious. And this is where therapies like energy healing, like the work that I offer, it takes you out of your subconscious mind into your subconscious and allows you to change the information that you have stored. And then you can alter the way you think and open yourself to new thought patterns and therefore new experiences, which means that you can start that process of opening up to your intuitive nature, even if it's something that you haven't paid attention to. You can really tell because so many people are caught up in these stories of comparison, of not feeling enough, of constantly second guessing themselves. This is because those aspects of worth and deep self-love weren't there instilled in that adult when they were a child. So your brain is constantly evolving and it's shaped by your experiences. And of course, this is a paradox because you can both get stuck in repetitive patterns and you can train your brain to open up to new neural pathways. Your brain has neuroplasticity, which means it's able to change through what you experience. And as you learn and adapt, and this is the muscle building part of your brain, just like with your body, what you use often becomes stronger and what you don't use becomes weak. So as you age, your brain becomes less plastic, but this is often because you're not as open to changes. If you keep yourself receptive to new experiences, new possibilities, and new skills, you're keeping this plasticity alive. With each repetition of a new thought or emotion or pattern, you reinforce a neural pathway, which in turn creates a new way of being. It's helpful to know that even when it comes to reprogramming your subconscious or healing disease, there is science that shows this is possible. It was previously believed that your health was predetermined solely by your heritage, by everyone in your family. If they've had heart disease, then you will too. The science of epigenetics has shown that this is not necessarily true, that your body, as in your DNA that determines your health and your experience of life, is impacted by your mind's interpretation of what's going on, as well as environmental factors. For example, if you have a belief that at the age of 50 you'll get heart disease like your father did, then you are programming that to occur. This is mainly your subconscious mind at work, not the conscious parts of your brain. But even so, you can bring your conscious mind to bear on the programming and change it. Your 50 trillion body cells can receive information from your mind. And studies have shown that it's possible to grow physical muscle just by imagining yourself doing a workout every day. You have to actually take yourself through the workout, through that visualization. In one of these studies, the participants actually had developed muscles on their body, which is really mind-blowing when you understand how powerful we really are. The more that you're able to take a creative and playful attitude to your life and let your imagination in, the more that you're able to tap into these wild and beautiful experiences. And then you don't have to be a victim of what you've experienced in the past. You have better tools to process it and to move beyond your family and your circumstances into a place where you are living you. And of course, it's always a paradox because by design, unless you completely leave your family and move to a different country and live a life where they're not around, you're going to keep being pulled into the dynamics of your childhood, into the dynamics that formed you. What I have seen is that when you do really keep showing up for this work, and I know some people in the spiritual world don't like to say work, but honestly, it is work. It's practice. It's constantly being in a relationship with yourself where you want to grow, you want to evolve, you want to meet some of your edges, you want to process your pain, you want to change the information in your subconscious so that your day-to-day experience also changes. One of the things that is said a lot in New Age spirituality is that you create your own reality and therefore that everything's a mirror to what you're thinking. I feel like this is one of those really simplistic rules of New Age spirituality that actually get people really stuck. As much as I do believe that we can change our inner life and that will have impacts on the world that we find ourselves in, I don't believe that it's true to completely create your own reality because we are living in this world. And in this world, there are all kinds of things that are happening and there are systems of oppression. What I do believe is that if you have enough privilege, you might be able to create a reality that keeps you away from anything that is difficult, challenging, negative. But if you don't have that level of extreme privilege, then you are also going to be in this world experiencing what the collective is experiencing. This is not always going to be a reflection of your own individual consciousness. One of the examples for this, and I've asked many spiritual teachers this question because I actually studied politics at university, and that was kind of my route into wanting to understand how we could make the world better. And whenever I was sat with any kind of spiritual teacher, I would ask them, why is there all this suffering in the world? And I've never really got a satisfactory answer to this question. If you fully believe that we create our own reality, then what does that really mean for anyone who finds their country is bombed, a war is started on their country? Did all of the citizens of that country create that reality through their consciousness? Or was that in fact to do with the oil that was in that country or some kind of political aspect that was beyond them? is it just that if you live in a Western country that we've all created a consciousness in Western countries that doesn't allow that to happen? I don't think so. And I find that kind of spiritual bypassing, kind of dangerous new age spiritual thinking actually really scary and really dangerous, because it means that people can say things like, that refugees chose to come in and experience this level of suffering, and they chose to have to walk with babies on their backs across countries and take to the oceans to try and find a safe home, and that their souls wanted to have that experience. And I think we have to be really, really careful with all of this, to come into this spiritual place where we assume that there is one destiny and that it's predetermined, that we have chosen all of the suffering that we experience. It's problematic in so many ways. And so I want to just make the distinction that I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that it is possible to do healing work on your subconscious and to change the information that is in your subconscious. When you have awareness in your whole body, your thinking mind becomes part of a symphony of neurons, sensations, and signals through which you receive information and you give information. And you're doing this all the time anyway. You just might not be doing it consciously. For example, your body language can express what you're thinking and feeling without you having to say anything. Our past experiences are stored in our bodies, and all emotions and trauma that haven't been digested and processed become part of our body mind, and then in turn influence how we feel, what we think, what we do. Our traumas, our wounds form and build on whatever is in our subconscious. An emotion in its true form, as energy in motion, only lasts 90 seconds. And the arrest of our experience of that emotion is to do with our wounds and the stories that we tell ourselves, or perhaps in a conflict situation, that then the way that the other person reacts then creates another emotion and another emotion. And so we become that we're in this almost like this ping pong exchange of difficult emotions, and then for build up, so that it's in this much deeper state that then can obviously take over and can last days, weeks, years. And then this, of course, can create new trauma, or it can reactivate trauma from past events. I believe that energy is actually our first language, and we don't really know what it is in the kind of dominant society conditioning. It's not something that was talked about a lot when I was a young person and at school and that kind of thing. I didn't really understand the importance of my energy and my subtle body. For me, the teachings of yoga and energy work, I did my Reiki master about 17 years ago, where I really got to experience a different way of relating through energy. We have these different layers around our body, and an auric field of energy, of light vibration. The layers closer in towards your body, these layers get slower and more dense. There are actually 72,000 nadis, which are conduits of energy and prana. Prana is life force. You can visualize them as rivers of light, that there's 72,000 rivers of light going through your body. The three main ones are Ida, which starts at your left nostril and relates to the energy of the moon and the feminine, and Pingala, which starts at your right nostril and relates to the energy of the sun and the masculine, and your central channel in the spinal cord, the Sushumna Nadi. This central channel connects your energy centers, and it's also where you find the chakras that are the wheels of energy. There are 7 of these that are widely known, although there's actually a lot of debate over whether the system that we've all come to know and love is accurate in itself. But either way, they give a map of energy in the body that's really useful. and allows you to understand that there are different centers in your energy body that actually relate to your physical body and to aspects of your inner world and your relationship with yourself and each other human beings, and the natural world. I go into more detail in all of this in the book Intuition, which takes you through different aspects of your body mind and how you can understand yourself, and gives you a lot of information that's helpful around really what a spiritual practice is and what it means to get to know yourself in a deeper way, so that you can also really trust the wisdom that moves through you, the intuition that moves through you, the access that you have to information that you have not learned, that is not the information that you have learned with your rational mind through that process of recall, of reading a book, of being told something and then remembering it. But actually, the wisdom that's in each of us is just there. We have that kind of intelligence. We make sense of our experiences. And often we know things that we can't even explain, like how we know them. We just have a sense about it because our intuitive intelligence can read information, it can listen to information that is there in the field. Thank you for tuning in. If you are enjoying this episode, do join our membership. For a small contribution, you can be part of our community where we deepen the conversation and offer spaces of learning and embodiment. As a member, you are a patron supporting the making of this show, keeping the episodes full length, free and accessible for all. And you receive a number of benefits, such as monthly soul space, going deeper sessions, access to our library of workshops, and discounts on all our online and in-person experiences. Our membership is what makes us able to make this show and stay advertising free in a world that is always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. Head to allthatweare.org/membership to find out more and join today.
I have been sitting with the reflection that it's now 17 years since I did my first practitioner training in the healing arts, which was my Reiki master in India. I did it with my parents. It's now 10 years since I held my first space. It was this beautiful weekly happening called Sunday Night Soul, which I hosted in a yoga studio in East London. And it was a space of meditation and pranayama, sacred song, and shavasana. And it all ended up in a sauna, which was just even more delicious and such a powerful way to end the week and open up into something new. And it's been 8 years since I started to work with clients as a facilitator, as a practitioner, and also host retreats and workshops and spaces for the healing arts, for yoga, for meditation, for mantra, for pranayama, for energy healing, for ceremonies, for rituals. These practices are such a deep part of me, and the path of healing has been a path that is so vast and has taken me into some really powerful, magical, miraculous moments. Also, some really dark corners brought me some really tough lessons. And of course, we are doing this healing work within the realms of human consciousness. And we are often having to interact with humans that can hold amazing space and open up so much, and often come with their own systems of oppression that they are living with, their own shortcomings. it's a real skill to walk through this path of healings and trainings and different modalities, and not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes you might find that you are in a situation that really doesn't feel right, where you feel like you're meeting the shadow, you're meeting the unconscious behavior in your facilitator, or that their work is missing a whole aspect of our collective healing. And so it's particularly aimed through one way of thinking, or one aspect of conditioning, and it doesn't leave enough space. And part of the path is to be discerning, be forgiving, be intuitive in what you choose, and always finding the lessons, and making sure that you have support that feels safe, that you can turn to. When we begin to really delve into the content of our inner worlds and what's there in our subconscious and our unconscious, it can be really scary, because we really are taught to hold it all together, to mask, to wear our masks, and to present certain sides of ourselves, and knowing which part of ourselves to present in certain situations in order to get what we need. It's why there's so much talk about authenticity, because it's rare. It's rare because so many of us have been conditioned to live in a way that is not authentic, that is all about being productive, about being seen in a certain way. Letting go of those masks and identities in order to delve deeper into what's there can be so terrifying. One of the things that I've observed is that there's a pattern with healing, and often when you enter into a retreat or a program, some sort of container, that often there's that real excitement when you begin, and things really start to move. And then you go into the space where you start to doubt it all. And often you can project quite a lot onto the facilitator, be highly critical, or notice, something really human about them. And kind of your ego can use that as a way of undermining the potential of a deep shift, a really deep transformation. And I always find that it's quite something in those weeks where like a lot's coming up, or in those days, like in the sort of middle of a retreat, where we're going deeper, and more of that unconscious, subconscious behavior is coming to the surface. And it's really a wild ride. And then what happens is, at that point, some people pull out and other people really move forward. And then something really remarkable can happen in these fields of healings, through programs, through retreats, through workshops. And I find it fascinating. It's really part of our human nature that as much as there's a part of us that constantly wants to evolve and heal, there's a part of us that wants to stay the same, that wants to stay in what we know, in what's safe, and that our ego wants to protect us from that change. And that's why so many people go for peak experiences with healing, and go for these big experiences that really shake you out of yourself. And so a peak experience might be a plant medicine ceremony. It might be like a really kind of high vibe workshop where you walk across fire, and the energy is really, really high, and you're releasing a lot. It might be a retreat where you have this incredible experience of connection and community. What happens when you have the peak experiences is that you experience something so different from where you are, and you experience an aspect of yourself and that potentiality But then it can be really difficult to live that, to integrate that into your day-to-day life. There are also the more gentle, subtle, transformative methodologies, such as yoga and meditation, that are more like the daily practices where the shifts are very small and gentle. And sometimes they can be extraordinarily transformative and huge, but they're happening at a pace that is more in line with your day-to-day. And I would say that experiences like energy work and breath work fit somewhere in the middle, where you can have these really big shifts, but they're not like a full kind of peak experience. You leave your life behind and you go on this new adventure and you return somebody different. But they're slightly more than the everyday practices that you can do yourself. And I want to go back to, why do we do this? And as I reflect, 20 years into my own journey of actively seeking practices and experiences through which I can grow and learn and shift, is that the conditioning that we know, that we are living, that we have grown up with, the ideas that we have, that rigidity of ourselves, is something that before you've entered into this work, you don't even realize it's possible to change it. And you imagine that you will always respond that way to certain things, that you will always experience that crippling doubt in a certain kind of situation, that you will never be able to do this thing that you dreamed of being able to do, sing in public or something like that, that relationships are always going to work out for you in a certain way. It's like there are these patterns of thinking and you're just like, this is just how it is. And when you open up to really deep transformative work, what you realize is that we are highly malleable, and that there's this balance between, of course, things that maybe will take time and that will always be aspects of who we are, and things that are not so difficult to shift. Through that, it can open up a whole different way of relating, a whole different way of understanding ourselves, a whole different spectrum of communication that's available, from understanding energy to being really deeply tuned in with intuition, to receiving divine information in different ways, to being able to read fields of information in different ways than we could have ever imagined. I feel like this is such an important part of what we can do for ourselves and also collectively, because as we integrate these patterns and what is there in our shadow, we open up into these beautiful fields of potential. And this has ripples. It ripples out in so many different ways. There is this language within the healing world of being triggered. And what does it mean to be triggered? Being triggered is having an emotional reaction to something. It's when something is happening and it's triggering something else that lives inside of you. It's triggering some past trauma. And so the reaction is disproportionate to the present event. It might not even be related to the actual facts that's what's coming up in the event. But in fact, something happens, and because of what you've experienced before, and sometimes the triggering is things from your childhood, sometimes it might even be ancestral triggering of something that lives inside of you that you don't even really understand. And you don't know why you're entering into a trauma response when you are triggered. When we are triggered, there are different responses that we might have. And so from a physical perspective, when you're triggered into a trauma response, your body actually, it sees a threat, and your brain and your autonomic nervous system reacts. They release hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And you may have heard the difference between your parasympathetic nervous system and your sympathetic nervous system. And so you go into the sympathetic nervous system and into this response, which is sometimes called fight or flight, but actually there's this fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop, or a mixture of all of these different responses. And it's because you're perceiving that there's an actual danger. And so one of the ways of understanding this, it's like if you were being chased by a tiger and you might have to run, or you might find yourself frozen. But this happens when we have emotional trauma, and often there's a kind of complex post-traumatic stress that really kicks in, because for us in the modern day, one of our biggest threats is just how much we have to manage in a day, how many things we have to do, and bills that we have to pay, and tasks we have to do, and things we have to be for different people. And so these responses really show up in our communication and in our relating. When people are triggered, some people might go into a fight response. And so they will become like more aggressive and defensive, and will be trying to get their point across over anything else. Others will freeze. They won't be able to say anything. They'll literally like go quiet or shrink in their energy, go small, disassociate. They might even like literally like faint or flop or go limp if they're being physically attacked. Others might fawn. And so fawning is kind of really going into people pleasing, doing what you can to make the other person happy, to ignore what you need, and to really neglect yourself in order to make yourself feel safer in that environment. When you enter into the path of healing, or when you're down that path of healing, it's not necessarily true that you will not have these responses, that you will not get triggered, but you just end up creating more awareness, so you can actually sort of step outside yourself and see, okay, I'm being triggered, or this dynamic is happening where this person is in flight, they're trying to get out of the situation, and then that's creating like another response, and so you're in this like dynamic. Maybe then you enter into fawning because they're in flight, and you're trying to ease the situation. And so it can help to kind of understand what's happening in these spaces. The more healing that you do, it's not necessarily about quantity, because it's not like you attend this many retreats or this many ceremonies and then suddenly like you get to this level where this happens or doesn't happen, because your healing path is really, it's not on a timeline like that. Like you might find that in one session of something, you're able to clear, reintegrate, and understand something that has been causing you a lot of pain or keeping you stuck. And somebody else, it might take multiple sessions or multiple experiences in order to understand that. And so the beautiful thing about our ability to heal is that there are no rules around like what will happen, but we do need to be really gentle and caring with ourselves, like on that path of healing. The more that you live in this way of self-reflection and self-understanding, you will find that you get triggered by less stuff. You're able to let things go quicker, that you're able to maintain a state that is present, that is calm, that is connected to beauty, even when difficult things are happening, which is not to say that you don't process emotions. And I feel like processing emotions is such a healthy part of the whole process of healing. And sometimes people, especially people that find it really hard to feel, often call people victims if they're, feeling sad. I feel like it's really important that we're able to healthily process sadness and grief, anger, disappointment, fear, guilt, and shame, so that we can understand ourselves deeper, instead of trying to get rid of these uncomfortable emotions, that we're able to really go through them, where we accept them, we understand them, and we're able to respond more lovingly to those aspects of ourselves or those experiences. There is a beautiful dance on the path of healing between effort and grace. All of this ultimately leads to freedom, which opens up fields of potential for you and for the collective. What in you is ready to shift and evolve and meet this day in a new way of being? In all of these years that I've been offering intuitive therapy, which is the energy work modality that I practice, I am constantly amazed in every session how different each session is and how something comes through that allows a shift of perspective, that allows a new relating to how the person that I'm working with in the session understands themselves. And I really see myself in that role as a conduit of energy and information so that whoever is there at the session, they're not being healed by me, but actually we're opening up their own ability to heal themselves, to understand their own medicine, to be able to relate to themselves in a new way. And one of the things about the work that I offer is that in the session, what we do is we plant seeds, and these seeds are information and energy. The way that I understand them is that we all come into this world with vast amounts of seeds, that there are so many qualities available to us as human beings. And of course, the ones that get planted, the ones that grow, the qualities that really grow into being in our childhood and in that first 7 years in particular, are the ones that those around us know how to plant, which makes sense, right? Like if you don't know what the plant is, then how do you water it and nourish it and tend to it? There are so many qualities available to us, yet a very small number of them are the ones that get really planted and rooted in our being. In the sessions that I hold, I see the seeds that want to be planted. You can imagine that they've just been sat in sacks, completely neglected in your shed, and that they are gathering dust. You don't have a good relationship with those seeds. And what we do is we go into the shed and we dig out the ones that are relevant to whatever it is that we're working with. I always feel like it's really nice to work with someone at the place that they want to work. And so that sweet spot between the conscious mind and the subconscious. And so somebody coming to me saying, I want to work on this, and maybe expressing a pattern that they have, an addiction that they have, or a way that they see that they're sabotaging their relationships, or something that they've always dreamed to do, but they can't for some reason, something like this. And we're able to dig into this a little bit deeper in the conscious mind, understand what that is, and bring more information up from the subconscious. And then as we plant the seed, it's so beautiful because these seeds, they are a reference point, but more than a reference point, they contain within them already information and energy. And it's this information and energy that then is released into the body mind. And then over the integration period, which is typically 6 weeks, which is 42 days. And they do say that there have been studies that show that 40 days is the amount of time it takes to anchor in a new practice and build new neural pathways. And so I ask my clients to work with these seeds over those 42 days, to water the seeds so that they can grow fully into bloom and root into their being and really become part of who they are. What's so beautiful is that the seeds themselves contain this energy and information. And over the course of those 6 weeks, every day, as you sit with the seed is actually sharing with you the information that it has in this language of energy. It's really extraordinary because we are so used to creating with our minds, and our minds are incredible and powerful. And there is so much power to visualization and to using the power of our minds to create new patterns. And yet there's something else that I find that happens that's really extraordinary when it's fully embodied through energy, when it's a fully somatic experience that you're feeling in every single cell of your body, this information. And so this work with the seeds, it's not actually like thinking about the seeds, imagining the seeds, and creating the seeds with that limited perspective of our mind and what our mind already knows about that particular quality. And these qualities could be anything from permission to be who I really am, or trust in who I am and what I have to offer the world, or deep respect of my sexual energy, or grounded respect of my life, or trust in my intuition, or freedom from judgment, or permission to live fully from an open heart, or permission to experience more pleasure. And rather than us, dreaming that up from our mind, it's like if the seed already has the information, then the seed itself can show you what that is every day as you're sitting with it and inviting that deep integration. It's truly amazing what can happen in the subtle body and with the subtle energy work. And I find that the subtle work can be really, really helpful for integrating the peak experiences as well, because they allow it to really, really ground and root in. There's something about energy work where you interact with the mind and the mind story, but then we go so much deeper into the subconscious, and there we look for the patterns. There we look for the fears and the shame and the guilt. I used to say that we release it, but actually we integrate it, we draw it in, and we release the hold that it has over us. And the more that we release the hold that the shadow has over us, the more creative we are. And the more that we are able to really tap into a deeper understanding of what our life is and what our role might be, what our purpose might be, of how we might be able to contribute more to this world, to our families, to our friends, to our communities, how it might be to not create more and more pain and suffering in our own lives and in the lives of those that we love. There is an interesting nuance here, though, which I've discovered, and I was talking to my dear friend today as we were out on an adventure together, and we were reflecting that, often one imagines that the more inner work that you do, and it is said that in New Age spirituality, that, then you'll just bring towards you like super amazing experiences, and people will be more kind to you, and they will see you, and they will honor you, and they will respect you. And I found that, sometimes that's true, but what can also happen is that you draw a lot of projection towards you, and that instead of, when you're extremely triggered, you might find that you're jealous of other people, that you're comparing yourself to other people, that you're feeling like you're not enough, or there's something wrong with you, there's a lack of worth, there's a sense of being stuck, there's not really knowing how to get there, and there may be more judgment of other people because you're judging yourself. And when you have come to a place where you're actually not doing that, or you're not doing that very often, and that you're really able to be there with someone else and, and listen to their situation without thinking about yours, you're able to experience someone else's joy without it bringing pain for you, you're really able to celebrate in other people's joy and celebrate in other people's success. And that this opens up a whole different relationship with yourself. And what can happen in that time is that your sense of self actually creates more projection in others, and that they might actually become more jealous of you or become more negative or more judgmental because your embodied beingness makes them feel uncomfortable. And that can happen sometimes. And then you might also find that your embodied beingness allows you to drop in with other people's embodied beingness, and you experience deeper levels of connection and intimacy than you could ever imagine. And that intimacy, that connection, that creativity, that's really what fuels all of the possibility in this earth, and our ability to actually look at where we are in all of the different situations that we find ourselves in, both personal and collective, and actually be able to walk on beautiful pathways through it. This is why, for me, healing and energy work is so key to the path of beautiful leadership, because I feel like the less that we can be in that field of projecting onto others, and the more that we can be clear in ourselves and in this beautiful dynamic relationship with ourselves and the unseen world, the more that we're able to show up to everything in our lives with more grace and love and patience and acceptance and creativity. And that's why I created the Beautiful Leadership Mentoring, because I know for me, on both my path in like the outward work that I have been doing as an activist, as somebody that cares about the world that we live in and that wants to contribute, as well as my path of my own healing, the thing that I felt was missing was this space of support with subtle yet powerful shifts and integration of the bigger experiences and all of the noise and all of the possibilities in order to find my way forward and to feel really supported in that. And I find that coaching can often be so mind focused, so can therapy. And when we hit that sweet spot where it's a somatic, embodied, energetic experience, it allows us to really activate all of the energy that we have in our body, so that we are living in a way where our body, our soul, our intellect, our intuition is able to work harmoniously. And I really feel that that's what we need, that this is a time where that shift away from living from that place of rational intellect and from being a really big mind that's disconnected from the whole body, that's really over, and we're coming into a time where we're being asked to be embodied, where we're being asked to feel, where we're being asked to be self-aware, where we're being asked to be really creative. I share all this because each of you in this community, I feel, has so much to offer, and you're doing so much, and it's so wonderful. For those of you that are stepping into a path of healing and are wanting to explore your wounds so that you can live in a way that is more alive and present, I really applaud you for taking those steps to step out of your comfort zone and to want to show up for those in your life in a new way. And for those of you that have been on this path for a long time, that are living this path with all of its wild twists and turns, with all that it brings up, with all the beauty and the darkness that you experience through it, I really applaud you, and I just say thank you Thank you for doing this for our collective healing. Thank you for being courageous enough to look within, to want to understand yourself deeper, to want to shift and evolve, for being courageous enough to look in those scary places. And the more that we are able to explore ourselves in this way, the more fields of potential we open up in this world. Thank you so much for listening. And I really hope that the information in this podcast episode has opened up something for you, and it allows you to relate with energy and with intuition and with your body mind in a deeper and evolving way. And I look forward to connecting with you in the members space, where we actually work with seeds in a collective way. And it's really beautiful what comes through in that group space. You're always welcome to reach out and ask me for advice or ask me for recommendations of practitioners or courses or anything like that, because I know that it can be pretty wild out there. And of course, I'm dedicated here to sharing some of the best and most interesting healers, modalities, perspectives here on All That We Are.
Thank you for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode and it has sparked some inspiration and creativity in you. As always, you can find links to everything we mention in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on allthatweare.org. We give space to our guests to share their perspective without debating it or fact-checking, as this approach allows for deep, unedited conversations from the heart. We trust your discernment and wisdom to take what is useful and challenge what isn't in your own understanding. We offer spaces for discussion and integration in our membership community, which we would love for you to join. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible by you, our beautiful community. If you loved this and would like to connect more deeply with us, please join our membership. You choose what you contribute based on our sliding scale, and you become a patron whose support makes this podcast happen, as well as receiving access to a library of many resources and invitations to nourishing events. Please also hit subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen so others can find us. This podcast is made by an all-female global team. Me, Amisha Gadiali, producer and host, Anna Greta Folderbach, who crafts the words that accompany each episode, and Mary Chan, who edits the sound so skillfully. All That We Are celebrates all that we are already and the untapped potential that lives inside us. It invites the full power of the more than human world, nature, the unseen, our ancestors, and our future generations. It reminds us that we never exist in silo, through borders, timelines, or polarity, that in each and every moment, all that we are is here.